Hello and welcome to your 5th tutorial on CSS. Today we'll talk about gradients and animation. To start off, let's discuss some selectors, and so in our body section let's write the div tag. So as you remember, the div tag defines a division or a section in our HTML document. Let's give it the class attribute, equal sign, 2 quotation marks, and let's write div1. And let's close our div tag. And so using our CSS internal style sheet, let's go up to here to our style tags and let's give our div some properties. And so let's write the selector, which is dot div1, and let's open our curly brace and let's also close it. And inside, let's give it some properties. So let's add in a width for 250 pixels, and let's also give it a height, 250 pixels also, and let's also give it a color, so let's say gold for example. And so let's save and refresh, and here we have our div with our given properties. So from our box model video, you know that the first thing in a box model is the margin, so let's also add in a margin and let's write 70 pixels, so that's from the top, 0 0 and 70 pixels from the left. And let's save and refresh, and here we have 70 pixels from the top and 70 pixels from the left. So let's add in a div within our first div. So let's go into here and let's type in div class equal sign, 2 quotation marks, and let's name it d1. And let's close our second div tag, and if we save and refresh, nothing will happen as we haven't given it any properties in our CSS code. So let's move on to our CSS code and let's give it some properties. So for our CSS code for D1, we're essentially going to be doing the same thing, but we change the selector to D1. So let's type in a dot D1 curly braces, and let's also close our curly brace, and let's also give it width for 150 pixels and height for the same amount, and let's also give it a border and let's make it double. So when we save and refresh, we get this div within our first div, so a box within our box. So next, let's add in a position property. A position property specifies the type of positioning method used for an element. And so let's go back to our code and type in position, and let's give it the value absolute. And when we save and refresh, nothing will happen as we haven't given it its measurements. So we need to give it its measurements. So let's type in left, so how far to the left it will be, so 30 pixels, and let's also add in a top as well, 40 pixels. So this is for our second div, and as we can see, it moved to the left for 30 pixels and to the top for 40 pixels. However, if we change the absolute value with relative, so let's do that right now. And when we save and refresh, our box should be in the middle, and here we go, it's in the middle of our first box, so our first div. And so let's change the value again to fixed. Let's add some blank spaces in our body, so line breaks to add scrolling. So type in BR here, and let's copy it and let's paste it to add scrolling. And so as we can see, when we scroll down, D1 does not move, however div1 does. And so let's just change it back to relative. So now let's move on to the main point of our video, which is gradients. Gradients basically let you display smooth transitions between 2 or more specified colors. So let's add in some gradients, and what we're going to do is we're going to type in the background property and we're going to add our gradient. So we have to put in a WebKit. A WebKit works for Google Chrome and Safari, and let's type in linear gradient, and we need to give it its values, so top, white and black. So it will be starting from the top, and it will start from white and it will fade gradually into black. And let's save and refresh, and as you can see, our gradient is now working in our D1, and it goes from the top from white to black. And we can also change our values from white and black to, let's say, red and yellow. Let's save and refresh, and as we can see, we now have this gradient, and it's from the top from red to yellow. So let's change red with green just for now. Save and refresh, and here we have our gradient. So as I mentioned earlier, WebKit works for Google and Safari, and let's duplicate this and let's change WebKit with O, which is Opera, so that's the Opera browser. And we can also duplicate it and change it with MOZ, which is the Mozilla Firefox browser. And we can also change it with MS, which is Internet Explorer. And we also can just delete it, so it can just be this. So this is for just any other browser that exists. So let's continue and let's change linear with radial, and let's change its values. So let's write white 20%, and let's write a comma, and let's write black 40%, and let's do the same thing for all of them. And here we go, we changed all of them to the same values, so it will work better. And let's save, refresh, and here we have our radial gradient. And so what we can do is we can make our page bigger and click on inspect, and here we have our page. And so let's expand this, so expand all, and let's click on this div. And when we come here, you can see our properties and our values, and we can easily change them. So let's say we want to change this 20. Let's highlight it, and here we go. You can see on my web page that the white is getting more clearer, and now it's fading into a black. And you can just mess around with this to find the best solution and change it in your file. And as I mentioned before, this is not permanent, it's temporary. So the inspect is just for you to find the best solution for your web page. And so let's close out of this and let's make our web page a little bit smaller so we can see our file. Here we go. And the next thing that we shall do, we shall change radial to repeating linear. So that's repeating, and line linear. And let's also change the values. So let's change it to 50 degrees, so that's 50 deg, so DEG, comma, white 5 pixels, and a comma, black 5 pixels, comma again, and type in black 10 pixels. And we shall do this to all of our background properties, so let's do that. And here we go, we now have all of our values, and let's save and refresh, And as you can see, we now have this box, so our div, with stripes, so they're black and white, and we can change the colors to anything that we'd like. I'm just using black and white so it will be easier for you to see and understand. So let's also use the inspect elements on our repeating linear gradient, and let's click here and let's expand all, click on our divs, here we go. And as you can see, we now have our repeating linear gradient, and we can change, let's say 50 degrees, right? We can change it to 30 degrees, and we can also do this. So now as you can see, it's just vertical straight lines coming down, and yeah, you can just mess around, you can change the colors of them. And so let's close out of this, and here we go, we're back to our designated divs. And so as you noticed, linear gradients go down, up, left, right, and diagonally, and radial gradients, they're defined by their center. Let's move on and let's type in another property, which is transform, and let's write a colon and let's write rotate and 7 degrees. Let's save and refresh, and as you can see, our div moved to 7 degrees clockwise, and we can change this value to, let's say, 36 degrees for example. Here we go, you can see that it moved 36 degrees clockwise. And so let's add in our browser support properties, so that's MS, O, Mozilla, so MOZ, WebKit, and just transform by itself. Here we go. And so let's move on. And so what we can do again is we can make our page bigger, click on inspect, here we go, and we can change the transform sizes to just see what will be best for our web page. And as you can see, we can go anti-clockwise as well, so that's using a minus. And yeah, that's basically it. Let's close out of this and let's move on. So let's go back to our file and let's make 6 more divs. Let's delete the BRs as we don't need them. And so to continue, let's add some more divs. So type in div, and this time ID equals sign, quotation marks, and the first one is going to be dv1. And let's close it, and let's duplicate this a couple times, and let's change the numbers. Here we go, so it should look something like this. And to give all of our divs the same measurements, what we have to do in our style sheet is we have to type in hashtag dv1, comma, and then hashtag dv2, comma, hashtag dv3, comma, hashtag dv4, comma, and so on, and you get the gist of this. And I made an error here, let me delete it. And let's open and close our curly braces, and inside of them let's give them width 100 pixels, height 100 pixels also, and background, so that's color red. And so when we save and refresh, as you can see, we get our divs and they're all joined together. And so if we want to separate them, we're going to type in the margin top property and 10 pixels, and I guess that's enough space. Refresh, and as you can see, we now have our spaces in between our boxes. And let's add text on our boxes. So what we're going to do is we're going to give them text. So the first one should be linear, second one ease, third one ease in, fourth one ease out, and then ease in out, and the last one transform. And when we save and refresh, our product should look something like this. And so let's work with single divs. So as you can see here, we're working with all 6 divs. So for the first one, let's type in hashtag dv1. So this is just to add properties for this specified div. And we're gonna write a pseudo class, which is hover. So that's from our last lesson. And let's open and close our curly braces, and let's give it the property width. And let's type in 300 pixels. So when we save and refresh, you can see that we get sort of this hover thing, and when we hover on it, it expands 300 pixels to the right. And it's not exactly an animation. And to add the animation, what we're going to do is in this selector, we're going to write transition width and 4s, which is 4 seconds. So that's the amount of time that it will take to open up and close. Here we go. As you can see, it's now an animation, and it took it 4 seconds to open up, and it will take it 4 seconds to close. Here is our animation one more time. And so let's do the same thing for all of our divs. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a comma here, and let's copy this just so it doesn't take a lot of time, and let's paste it a couple times, and let's change this to 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so we gave all of our divs the same property, and let's save and refresh. And so as you can see, it works for all of our divs. So we have an animation on all of them. Here we go. As you can see, it's like a wave. So our original div size is 100 pixels. So it's starting with 100 pixels and it's ending with 300 pixels. And so let's move on and let's add different types of animations to our divs. And so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write the div, so dv1, and let's open and close our curly braces, and let's write webkit line transition line timing and line again function, and its value is going to be linear. And let's duplicate this. So let's copy this and paste it here, and let's change dv1 for dv2, and let's change linear to ease, and let's change this with 3, change linear with ease in, and it has a line in between, don't forget, and paste it here, change it with 4, change linear with ease out, and let's make a dv5 as well, and let's change it to ease in out, ease line in line out. And let's also make the last one, which is dv6. We're going to change this to rotate. We're going to change nearly this full thing, so we're changing this property with just transform, and let's add a colon here, and let's type in rotate brackets, and let's say 360 degrees, so 360 DEG. And for other browsers, we're just going to write transform colon rotate, and we can write the same thing, DEG. Here we go. So when I save and refresh now, we'll have the different types of animations. So to start off, let's start with dv1, which is linear. So that's just our simple animation, and as you can see, it doesn't go back automatically. And next is ease. As you can see, it's faster, then it gets slower. Here we go, fast to slow. And next is ease in. So this is a slow start and fast ending. And next is ease out. So this specifies a transition effect with a slow end. And as you can see, it ends really slowly. Next is ease in out, which specifies a transition effect with a slow start and end. Here we go. And next is our transform rotate. And so for this to work, what we have to do is let's go up here and let's write here 1s comma, and let's write transform 2s, so 2 seconds. And we also have to add in the hover pseudo class. Hover and save, refresh, and here you go. You can see that it rotates and it rotates back again. You can mess around with the seconds